Hi, I'm Maya Jonas-Silver. I am an editor at The Crimson and a Harvard student, and I am introducing Alexandra Garcia, who is a multimedia journalist for The Washington Post. She reports, shoots, and edits video stories on topics ranging from healthcare and immigration to fashion and education. Awarded 8 regional Emmy Awards, a National Edward R. Murrow Award, and top honors in the National Press Photographers Association's Best of Photojournalism contest. She was also named the 2011 Video Editor of the Year by the White House News Photographers Association. She's been a teaching assistant at the National Geographic photo camps in Chad and Botswana, and a judge for the Best of Photojournalism contest. Please welcome Alexandra Garcia.
Oh, that was nice. Hello. So I have been working at the Washington Post for the past 8 years before coming to this lovely heavenly place called a Nieman Fellowship. And I'm going back there this summer. But my route to doing what I do has been a little bit strange. So I left high school convinced that I was going to be a painter, like a fine arts painter. So I went to art school and I studied painting and graphic design. And then all of a sudden while I was at art school, I realized that that the real world was like far more interesting than anything I could ever imagine. So I transferred to American University and I studied photography there. And my last semester at AU, I got an internship at the Washington Post as a web photo editor. And after I graduated, I got hired that summer. So I started as a web photo editor, which meant that I picked photos for the homepage of the website, built photo galleries, and generally worked from 4 to midnight, with my days off being Monday and Tuesday. So those were my first 2 years out of school. Kind of awesome. But I realized that there was this team of people, like back in the back of the newsroom, and they were really fun and young, and they played a lot of ping pong. And I was like, what are they doing? But they were the video and multimedia team, and I started hanging out back there, and they were producing, the Washington Post has been producing multimedia projects for a really long time and putting video online since it had to be like thumbnail size for you to be able to see it. And so I went back there and realized how exciting it was for somebody who had been focused on still photography to hear characters' voices and hear subjects telling their stories in their own voice, in their own accent, with their own cadence. And I felt like it was this just beautiful part of storytelling that I needed to be a part of. So I became very annoying to all of them, which means that I would go back there and be like, hey, can I come out with you? Can I come out with you? Can I shadow you? Can I shadow you? Can I carry your tripod? Always suggest to carry people's tripods because nobody ever wants to carry a tripod. So eventually they brought me along, and that's kind of how I learned how to do video. I would just tag along with them, and they were very, very nice to me nice. They were harsh on me in terms of critiques, but it really helped me learn what I was doing. So I'm going to show you a few pieces of work, and then probably talk for about 40 minutes, and then take about 20 minutes of questions. So my first big assignment, my editor, I had been begging him to let me go out and do a video story on my own. Sure.
And Kevin, do you need
The question is, I'm sorry.
the lighting for the room? Can you bring the lights down?
Well, this is fine for the, I'm fine.
I mean, if you want to bring the screen lights down, I'm not gonna mind because I like it when it's like going to the movies.
We just want to have video recording, so.
As I think if you keep this light on me, then and take whatever's down by the screen, it'll be good. Sounds like a good plan to me. And a hush falls over the crowd. This is fun. So eventually my editor was like, okay, you want a story? Here you go. And I realized a little bit how unprepared I was when I got down to cover this health clinic in Southwest Virginia. because I really wanted to do a good job. As I was telling the smaller group over here a little bit ago, this was my first big project, and I did not want to mess it up. And one of the big things that I think happens with video storytelling is that you have this recorder that can record everything. It's not bound by how quickly you can take notes. It can record everything, and so I did. And I recorded 14 hours of footage. It took me far too long to edit, but I'm going to show you a couple of minutes of the story that came out of it, which took me far too long to edit, as I said, far too long. Every year, hundreds of doctors, dentists, and volunteers come to Wise County, Virginia to provide free medical care to those who can't afford it.
Where does the money come from to be able to afford to buy insurance? I mean, we're having problems eating.
People call up all the time, patients, and they say, what do I have to bring with me in order to get care? I say, all you have to do is show up, but you better show up early.
Okay, morning folks. Now, what I'm going to do, of course, is start calling out number one.
I came up with the name Remote Area Medical because Remote Area Medical was what we were planning to do. An airborne operation that has capability to parachute into some of these out-of-the-way places. But now 60% of all the work we do is right here in America.
Hundreds of volunteers have transformed the county fairgrounds into a field hospital, providing medical, vision, and dental care to more than 2,500 uninsured and underinsured patients.
I'm 44 years old, and I've worked all my life. I've never not had a job, but I've never had insurance.
For many waiting to get into the clinic, the event is the only chance for medical care they will have all year. The per capita income in Wise County is $14,000, and jobs are hard to find. But even for those who are employed, insurance is hard to come by. Mickey Hollyfield works in the coal mines.
Really, I don't have no insurance, period, and I've got to have 22 filled, and then I have to have them clean. So they're saying that I'll be here for 2 days, and I'm hoping a day's worth will take care of me. Because I can't really afford to be here for 2 days. I got a job, I got to keep it. So
that people would spend the night in their cars to get a tooth pulled. I mean, it just is not something that you read about in textbooks or see at school when you go into school or see in your private practice.
At the pediatric dentistry trailer, Amy Stanton has brought her 2-year-old son Daniel to see a dentist for the first time.
Open there. Oh gosh.
For one, he won't drink milk, so therefore he's not getting any calcium. And all the enamel come off his front teeth, and then they just start breaking off.
Listen, the infection.
Having special computer issues today. Anyway, but I think that's enough. This is good. This will keep me on time. The most interesting thing about that story, though, was in 2008, that when it ran online, it ran with the video first. So we had a print story that was written by Mary Otto. We had a photo gallery. But online, we really wanted the video to kind of lead the experience, which I feel like works in a lot of cases, and I feel like a lot of people don't do that as much as they could. I think in this case, hearing someone say, I've worked all my life and I've never had insurance, and hearing him say it, he's such a lovely character, but hearing him say it, I think is really powerful. And I think that introduced you to the story, because what I was trying to do was introduce people to the people who come to this clinic, while Mary Otto's article talked a lot more about remote area medical and what kind of funding they get and where does the money come from and how many people are coming and what's the history of the organization. So while her article could focus on that, mine could focus more on the characters. Something else that was really eye-opening to me from that story was that we had a online chat with the organizers, and the number of people who wrote in asking to volunteer really, I think it was the first time that I realized this was, I think, right about the time that we were starting to put comments on articles. But before that, unless you got letters or emails, you didn't really know that people were listening or reading or doing anything. And just seeing the response from that story was really encouraging and really got me interested in telling stories that sort of let people participate in them. So in 2009, my editor asked us all to come up with the idea for a series. And I had been really interested in street style blogs. But when I would look at the street style blogs, I would always wonder, what does that person sound like? How does that shirt actually move? Where is this picture taken? Also, I've lived in DC for most of my life, and I got so sick of all my friends who live in New York and elsewhere telling me that DC is not a real city and it's boring. Because I think also DC has really been there's so much going on in the city, and it's really a home for people. And people usually think of it as like politics and pantsuits, and they only think about official Washington, but there are a lot of us who actually live there, and it's a home. So I worked on this series where people wrote into me and kind of suggested the next neighborhood that I should hit up, which was kind of fun. So they were kind of leading me along my journey to be a tourist in my own city, which was kind of neat. There were 16 episodes, and they were pretty popular. And I'm going to show you, I think, about 5 minutes of excerpts, and then, yeah, and hopefully this one will play all the way through. I certainly hope so.
Swag is your bop. How you move in life. You get looks, but it's like, I like that. Not, what's she wearing? It's funny. I'll go and shop in a woman's store to find stuff that will make me happy.
This is like from a thrift store at like the beach. This is from a thrift store in San Francisco. Like the gems are always like hidden away. You have to be dedicated to like scouring through the racks. People are like, oh my God, your arms are so toned. Literally, it's from like going through the racks.
It's almost like wearing a mask, I guess it's like why women put on makeup. In a way you can hide, but at the same time you still express yourself.
It sounds strange. For me, if I had to walk down the street in a dress like this and I was complimented by a man, probably because of my body. But for a woman, that means there's some kind of elegance to it.
Of course, I got to take it back to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Carlin, doing that move. And the jury's made by me. Two people we can wear the same thing, but I might look different from you because of my energy. You might look different from me based on who you are. So style is really what they say now, swagger, And how you doing? Confidence, so you move in confidence, you got swagger.
I'm wearing a pink dress with flowers all around it because it's Easter.
So glad I'm here. So glad.
People still put on their Sunday best.
I love the dress.
This is the way I was brought up.
I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so in the Southern tradition, we have the Easter bonnet with the frills upon it.
I never come to church without a hat. I have a closet, all different color hat boxes. Maybe 50. Yeah, it's 50, I know. All kinds and all shapes. My husband always said, don't bring my hats in here, but he knows me.
When I go visit
my friends in other schools, you know, you can wear sweatpants and hoodies and sneakers to class. Never. Not here. I wore a hoodie and sneakers one time to class my freshman year, and I went to class and I felt so uncomfortable that I came back and I changed and went to the rest of my classes for the rest of the day.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I always flip through pages of magazines and like try to maybe mimic what they have, whatever. I just want to experiment and like dip my hands in a lot of stuff so I can like see what I really want to do.
Like, you know how they say, you know, Geminis have two sides of them? My style is my second person, you know, I bring with me every day.
They're off and running. On the outside, better than even goes to leave with Slaney Rock Racing in second place.
Some people are here to watch the horses. Some people don't know there are horses here. We've all seen the pictures of what people wear at the Kentucky Derby, so.
I wanted to wear a hat mostly, like it seemed like so much fun.
We're ready to get to these occasions out in the country.
Slaney Rock Racing.
All right, we got it. I think that might be enough. I've just got a minute left.
I think I've always been kind of a tomboy. I don't like girly things. I don't like pink.
I try to not get the nerd scientist look going ever.
I've got this newfound like confidence in like being bright and bold.
I gotta be me.
Anyway, all right, that's enough. Now we're good. One of the most interesting things about that project was I was really trying to capture the feel of each of the neighborhoods. So I would try to see if there were street musicians playing or what music was going to be in bars, and then kind of call up the musicians ahead of time, make sure I could record like quality recording. So most of what I showed had music that was actually recorded on location, which I feel like helps bring it into that still that kind of neighborhoody feel. This doesn't look that fancy, but in 2009 when this commenting system launched, it was like super fancy. Which was kind of fun because people got to say like, come to where I live, come to where I live. And so I felt like I had this audience and I was communicating with them, and it was kind of fun. A little bit about interactivity. So as I was going along and doing these projects, I was really excited by how you can tell stories that's different online. Like I didn't want to do television. I didn't want to do something that could just be printed on a page and put up, like still photography. I really wanted something that kind of took advantage of what's unique about the web and about mobile devices and tablet devices. And I felt like I wanted to start experimenting with that a little bit. So in 2011, the Post launched a 6-month series about Muslims in America 10 years after 9/11. And my colleague Ben and I were in charge of working on multimedia projects for it. So we did 2 projects. I'm going to show a little bit from each of them, and then talk about how we made it interactive. So this is the intro video to our first project. And what we did for this was there was a Washington Post poll that came out early that year that talked about the fact that I think 33%, I'm going to get this right, 33% of Americans still believe that mainstream Islam promotes violence. And so we were interested in like, who are these people? What questions do they have for Muslims? And then talking to Muslims and wondering, how do they actually feel perceived? And so what we did was we went around the country and we interviewed over 100 Muslims and non-Muslims. And then we put the Muslims facing one way and the non-Muslims facing the other way, so it would kind of make sort of a virtual dialogue. So I'll show you the intro video to the project, and then I'll show you a little bit about the project.
Why did you come here? Is it to add to our culture?
I came to America to enjoy its freedom and to have an experience in a very special nation.
It has become normal to feel
fear Muslims?
A lot of Muslim people get judged before someone meets them because a lot of people think, you know, the Quran's all about violence, and it's really not.
The baby is born with his face on the ground.
Do you want to be an American, be accepted, and have everybody know exactly how you feel?
I'm an outcast, basically.
They said the threat level today is as high as it has been since September 11th because of increased radicalization in our country.
How come we haven't heard anything from the large number of peaceful, patriotic American Muslims?
The arguments against Muslims has evolved all the time. It morphs into something. You fight one, then it morphs into something else.
If 10 Christians go out today and commit an act of terror, would you like to be blamed for those 10 people?
Peace and injustice.
Do you condemn radical Islam?
There needs to be a boogeyman to divert the attention of the people from real issues.
So that was the intro video to our project. And then what we wanted to do was build sort of a mosaic of these different video clips. So have sort of to make kind of an interactive dialogue between all of the different videos that we did. So we worked with an awesome developer, designer, Grace Korber, and this is what we came up with. And you can filter the interviews by gender, by religion, by age group, by job, and then you can also filter by theme. And so like if you're in the uncomfortable questions theme, any of the videos you click on, it'll just start there and pull all of the quotes that relate to that theme.
Patriotic, not.
So that was pretty exciting for us because I felt like we were finally doing something that was truly different. You know, I'd been working on multimedia projects at the Post for a long time, doing audio slideshows and doing some graphics, but they were always siloed. It was like, here's an article, here's the graphic, here's the photo. And I don't feel like that's the way that readers read, and I don't feel like that's the way that users want to experience a story. I think they want it all integrated, and I felt like this was one place where we were starting to do that. Also for that story, so the Post did a lot of stories, and they were very serious and very, very excellently reported stories, but I really felt like there was a hole in sort of the secular Muslim population. I felt like that population rarely gets covered. The people that I knew in high school, for example, and I know now. And so my colleague, Ben, had done a video about the Arab American Comedy Tour in 2003. So we called up one of the comedians, and lo and behold, he was planning a comedy tour around the South with 4 Muslim comedians. It was called the Muslims Are Coming Comedy Tour. And so we decided to tag along for a few days, and I'm going to show you a couple minutes of the video that we came out from that with.
You know what I'm scared of? I'm scared to go to the airport. And this is why. So when I walk in, security sees an Arab. But as I mentioned, I have cerebral palsy. So I'm a shaking Arab. So when they look in the camera, they're like, that bitch is nervous.
Proud Muslims, yes. Give it up for Islam, baby.
So that's what I'm doing for the Middle Eastern conflict. The question is, what the are you guys doing?
Italian guys may be sitting over a dead body holding a smoking gun, like, officer, I don't know, I think he shot himself in the back 4 or 5 freaking times. Al-Qaeda claims responsibility for things they could have never done. They call up, okay, do you know the eclipse? Muslims Are Coming comedy tour / documentary. We're coming right now to Southern Lake, mixed up Birmingham, Alabama, my friend. We're trying to use our comedy as a way of reaching out to people.
And kind of showing them the other face of Islam.
No mosque, not here, not now. To me, in the last 2 years, I saw the growth of Islamophobia, and then the Ground Zero Mosque, the Lower Manhattan Community Center, I think sparked a whole other wave of anti-Muslim rhetoric. There's mosque controversies going on, and we just really couldn't wait.
With the election of Barack Obama, there was this weird
thing in the air where suddenly everyone's like talking about, well, he might just be a Muslim.
12% of America believes that you're a Muslim.
Like it was like the most disgusting possible thing. Like this guy could be a Muslim. You know, like it was so upsetting.
But there's something on that person, maybe religion, maybe it says he's a Muslim, I don't know.
You know, there's another election coming up.
You talked about not appointing a Muslim to your cabinet.
You can't have like candidates slinging barbs at Muslims.
Would you be comfortable with the Muslim in your cabinet? And I said, no.
I thought it was really important to go to these towns and come, you know, kind of come in peace. What is up, Birmingham, Alabama? Each of the comedians is kind of involved in the faith completely differently. They get to see that we're not generic. It's not 1 billion Muhammad Atta.
People in Birmingham, come play a game with us. Name that religion. You can win prizes. All right, want to play a game anyway? Come on over, young guy. What's your name? 2 out of 3 questions. They're from the New Testament, Old Testament, the Quran. You have to guess.
Let the woman learn in silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence.
Quran. Wait, that was a very quick answer.
Very quick answer. And why did you answer that way?
Because of women are subjected to men.
Okay. Well, the real answer is New Testament.
We're playing on people's perception of Islam.
For example, you're dressed like an American.
Yeah, I am an American.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm American Iranian.
You know, there's only one kind of American, and that's American. I'm from Holland, but I don't claim to be a Dutch American.
Right.
I'm an American American.
Do the other women that cover themselves and their men, do they look down on you?
So it's a totally personal decision. I'm super duper secular. I think that Islam contains someone like me.
Anyway, so that's a little bit from that piece. And online, it was neat because we had this online page that had it's about the finished videos, about 10 minutes. And then we had extra interview clips and a little more serious stuff about like how do you identify with the faith and these kinds of things underneath the video so that people could explore more if they wanted to. So one of the things about my job is that I look like a little bit of a circus act. And we can talk a little bit more about like what that looks like, but usually I carry 2 fanny packs. 2. A big one in the front where I keep my long lens, my batteries. My audio recorder is strapped across the side over here because I shoot with a DSLR camera, so a camera that can shoot both still images and video images, because I have to shoot sometimes stills for the newspaper and a video for the website. So I have the audio recorder strapped around here, my headphones here, one camera here with a microphone on it, another camera here usually, tripod. Is that it? If I'm shooting with 2 cameras, I have 2 tripods, which then that gets crazy. But the reason I bring this up is because I do think and we can talk more about this. I know that you're all thinking about getting jobs and what are you going to be required to do, and are you going to have to be like a here I am with my like things falling off of me. And I do think that there's something to be said. I do think that there's something to be said for specializing in something and being really good at it. Because I do think that when you try to do too much, and I'm going to show you an example of that soon, the quality of the work suffers, and really the quality of the work should be paramount. So that's why I'm showing you pictures of me looking like a circus act. So I did a story on the border in 2011 that was about a group of students. Okay, let me start that over. There was a family, and the father had been deported, and the mother was a U.S. citizen. The father was not. And so it was an education story about sort of the educational decisions that the family would have to make because their kids were born in the United States, so they were U.S. citizens. So either they had to split the family apart, the father would have to go live in Mexico, the mother would stay in the U.S. with her kids, or they would move everybody to Mexico, where then the students would go to Mexican schools. But the thing is, the students didn't really speak Spanish that well because they had lived in the States all their lives. Or the third option, which was move the family across the border and then have the students cross the border every morning at around 5 a.m. to go to school. And that's what this family ended up doing. So I went down there to cover them, and I was shooting stills for the newspaper and video for the website. And it's tough to do both. And the reason I bring this up is because of this picture. So before I went down there, I knew I was going to have one chance because I was going over a weekend, and then I was going to be there for one day. And by this point, things had resolved themselves, so they were only crossing the border 2 days a week. And so I called the video editor, and I was like, hey, I'm only crossing the border with these kids once. Do I get it in photo or do I get it in video? What do you think he said? Get it in video. And then I called the photo editor, and I was like, and what did they say? They said, this is an A1 story, we need the A1 image, and the A1 image is of the students crossing the border. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. So what ended up happening is I ended up shooting this scene. I don't think I'm going to show the video right now, but I ended up shooting the scene mostly in video because I needed that transition to get them into the United States. But I clicked off the video mode for about 4 frames, shot 4 photos, and then went back to shooting video. And when I got back, the honest truth was this is not a great image, and they did not want to run this on A1, and they didn't. So they ended up picking another image. But it was really tough to have those conversations with my editor about, I can only do what I can do. And so I think knowing that the quality can suffer can help you advocate for yourself. If you really do feel like you're going to be doing too much, like keep the quality thing on the top of the conversation, because people really do still care about that. I'm not going to show you that. Oh, this is funny. So this is my friend was shooting a movie premiere. I think that's TI. Am I right there? And it's really funny because when you're like a one-man band, people often get very confused. People are like, well, where's the reporter? And you're like, I am the reporter. And they're like, where's the photographer? And you're like, I am the photographer. So this is just really, I just think this is the most hilarious thing. We made fun of her for. So this is a video she shot when he walked up there, and he was like, huh?
Pleasure.
Good day.
So you direct, cameraman, everything. Look, I got a low budget movie shoot.
I just think that's really funny. But the honest truth is doing multimedia at a newspaper can be extremely fun and extremely collaborative if you're not trying to duplicate each other's work. So in 2012, the dance critic for the Post, Sarah Kaufman, decided that she wanted to do a series about the extraordinary movements of ordinary people, sort of the hidden choreography of our daily lives. And so part of this, she did one on a restaurant kitchen, sort of the choreography it takes to make a 4-star meal at one of these like super duper fancy restaurants. And then another one was, and this is the one I'm going to show you a little bit of now, the number of people it takes. Have you ever wondered, because I have, like at the Verizon Center, they'll have like hockey, and then the next night they'll have a J-Lo concert. And you're like, what? How did you turn this in 24 hours from a sports arena into a concert location? And so she came to us, which is the best. When things work the best is if a print reporter has a great idea and they come to us early and we can collaborate from the beginning on, which part are you going to put in your story, which part are you going to put in your story, so that, if people watch the video and it's exactly what's in the story, they're going to feel cheated. They're like, you just wasted my time because you just made me do the same thing twice, and nobody likes to do that. And so we talked about how we were going to do it, and we decided the video was going to be kind of numbers-based. What are the numbers that it takes to get this done? And that her story would be this beautifully written account of the choreography. But of course, I do think that video for that story was necessary, right? For showing movement, showing change over time. That's what video is really good for. So this video is about 2 minutes and 45 seconds, I believe. I'll show it, and I think this might be the last thing I have to show, and then I have some other stuff. I don't know if you guys are getting bored.
Okay. Today will be a 23-hour day for a lot of people. We get here early in the morning, 4 a.m. today, and come 7:30 tonight, the show starts, so it all has to be unloaded and set up. The guys mark the rigging points, then you build the trusses, then you lay out the cable, then you raise the grid, then you put the lights on it.
What we need to do is start down here and just fill in the middle.
Little bump off. Watch your fingers, gonna take some weight.
It can be very dangerous, and there's always a chance for human error.
Looked up and was like, how much do they get paid? So I was like, well, shoot, it looks fun, looks exciting.
Particularly in a larger venue, 18,000 plus venues, I mean, it's a lot of empty space to fill. People want to see a show, they want to see a spectacle, they don't want to just listen to the music on the radio.
It's all about the show. People don't buy a ticket to come and see us put this up. People buy a ticket to come and see their favorite stars and be entertained. You gotta tear it down, put it in the truck, go to the next town.
Anyway, so that is that video. And then I was hoping we could talk a little bit about what's inspiring me. So I just went to the narrative conference and at BU, was that last week? A week before last? And everybody kind of got snowfalled out. Like, people were like, no more talking about snowfall. And I'm going to be honest with you. When a snowfall first came out, of course, I found it amazing. But at the same time, I was like, oh, come on. We've been doing this for a long time because people have been embedding video clips inline for a long time. Like, I remember doing a story in 2007. The thing is, theirs was so beautifully executed that I still think that we should talk about it, even though there's no more snowfall. Have you guys all, has anybody here not seen Snowfall? Okay, I'm going to scroll through this very quickly. So, this is how this story opens. And then you scroll down, and there's not a lot of junk on the page. It's a beautifully written narrative. You can follow it without getting distracted. Things are going very well. Oh, something important happens where we have a quote. You can play the video right in line. No more junk. New chap. Hey, where is this story happening? Where is it taking place? Oh, that's cool. Right there. Right? Right. Oh my God. Okay. let's keep reading. We're reading. Some photos. Oh, look. Hey, opening this like this makes me actually maybe want to click on the video, instead of having a still image with a little play button on it. Like, that actually makes me maybe want to click on it. Still, nice reading experience. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, an ad. It's okay. Yeah, the thing about this story is there are a lot of characters. I'm like, yeah, who is this guy again? Oh, yeah, slideshow right there. Oh, good. Okay, I see him. That's good. I feel like it's actually a really intuitive way of reading. And I feel like they were really thinking about the reader here. They weren't thinking about, whose department was it? Which silo in the newsroom was going to take care of this part, and which silo was going to take care of this part? They were thinking really about the user. And that's why I think this is so beautiful. Anyway, I could do that all day, but we won't. I also wanted to, whoa, hello. Okay. We'll go back to that. About a year before Snowfall came out, ESPN's Outside the Lines did this layout, which I'm not sure how many of you have seen it, but it's also quite gorgeous. And I think it's just giving us a taste of what the future could actually look like if we all work together and talk to the multimedia people as you're getting started with a story. Because if you do, they could come up with something like this that's really, really beautiful and also like a really engaging reading experience. And where videos make sense to put them, you put videos. Where they don't, where they're just duplicating the text, you don't. And you have just really well-written text. Isn't that a great way of having like a photo gallery? You just get from one, you go to the next, you get to a new chapter. You have some facts here. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of the numbers thing. Some fun illustrations. A time lapse that basically works as you're scrolling down the page. Yeah, that's smart. Video. Pull quotes. That's inspiring to me. Also, I just wanted to show you, because those two are pretty big operations that are doing those. This is actually a website that is run out of UNC, University of North Carolina. And every year they do a special report about powering the nation. So this past year it was about water. The year before it was about coal. And they're doing beautiful multimedia stories in a student newsroom. And some of the stuff is like quite cool. Let me see if I can show you. They just did an interactive documentary about water. I'll just show you the first couple minutes. But this is all student work, so it's inspiring to me. And then they have lots of stories, lots of infographics. This is all student work. It's like killer. It's amazing. Undergraduates? And graduate students, but mostly lots of undergraduates. I know some people who worked on these projects. It's crazy pants. I know. They're like, I'm terrified. They're all going to come and take my job. And that's it. So one of the things that I just really want to think about and talk to you guys about is, hopefully you'll have lots of questions, about how maybe, together we can create something new that's not television, that's not newspaper printed on the page. Because I think that we have an opportunity. I think it's so exciting, the stuff that you can do in browsers, on tablets, and mobile. And you guys are the generation that's going to build this stuff. So it's kind of exciting. Questions? So that's it for me. Now I can take your questions, 20 minutes or so. Yeah.
One question I have is, this stuff is all really impressive, but it takes more time than just a typical, for us, student newspapers do. So how do you think it makes sense to go around balancing the time commitments of either a daily or a weekly college paper that has X amount of people on staff to do this stuff too?
For sure. In our newsroom, we've had a shrinking multimedia and video staff also. We used to have 10 people, now we have 4. So I think the things that you have to really take into consideration with that is really you have to pick your battles and you have to choose what you're going to do multimedia on really wisely. Something that I always think about is, really when you think about a story, really is it better told as text? Is it better told as video? Pick one. Picking one takes less resources, and usually users aren't going to click on more than one. Things like, something that drives me a little bonkers is when people are like, well, we should have a video with that. Well, why? Really asking why. What can the video bring to the story that text can't? I, for example, cannot really stomach, some types of event video, if it's not been edited down, like if you are interviewing somebody for an hour, if that person is like Charlie Sheen, okay, right? But if that person is as a reader, I don't need to listen. I want to know what he said, but I want to kind of skim through and find the things that are useful to me. And if you're providing a video, people can't skim through a video in the same way. And so I find that a very frustrating video experience. So I think using video resources in that way doesn't necessarily make sense. I think if you're talking about the construction of a new building on campus, or some people setting up for something and you can do a time lapses are really easy to do and they don't take very long. And I feel like that's really providing something to the user. That's providing value. And then maybe you won't need to write a story. Maybe you could just have the time lapse, And I think really thinking about when you're going to use those resources, because they do take a lot more time. This is an argument I have often with my editor. When I'm being sent out on a story and I'm like, well, can we get it from elsewhere? Is the AP covering this announcement journalism? Is the AP covering it? If so, does it make sense for me to go there? Because they have sat trucks and things that we don't have as a small newspaper staff. I have my 13-year-old car and it doesn't really transmit anything anywhere. It can barely get me to where I'm going. And so I have those conversations very often with my editors about whether something really makes sense. Because I also don't want to produce stuff that nobody's going to look at. And so if I feel like people are going to want a print story, then I don't want to produce a video, because I want to produce what people want. So does that help answer your question a little bit? It's really about allocation of resources and really asking yourself which form of storytelling works best for this story, and picking one, and not doing multimedia for the sake of doing multimedia, because I think that's a huge waste of time. Yeah.
So with a lot of multimedia projects, I think a lot of the kind of the time investment comes in training new people that are coming in, and I feel like one problem that we're having is whether it be with video or interactive graphics, people are taking too long to be trained, and so they feel like they're not doing a lot, and people tend to drop out at the beginning because they are unable to get something really substantive out the door. What are kind of strategies for kind of getting around this or alleviating that kind of tension?
Some of this stuff takes time to learn how to do. Are these people who are learning the multimedia because they are already at the publication, or are these people that are like new recruits who are like, hey,
Usually it's new recruits.
Okay. I would say that's a tough one. Give me 1 second. I would say that for the most part, as much support as you can provide them. I mean, it's possible to teach yourself to do this stuff. So if people are really committed, they're going to learn how to do it. If they're going to drop out of doing it, I'm not sure that this is what they should be doing. You know, you have to really enjoy doing this kind of work to do it. Does that make any sense? That's not a useful answer whatsoever. Ask me a follow-up question so I can come up with something different. I need to get on a new track. Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit related to that, but like for new people, like what's something that people should focus on? Like, is it like the editing process, the shooting? I mean, if they're like open-ended to doing anything with video, like
with
what's
video?
the start? Yeah.
I would have people work very, first to work on like a profile, like natural sound, not narrated, a video profile of an interesting character. That's usually a good starting point. Even one step back from that, the way that I kind of left this out of my presentation, but as I was bugging the video people to take me along and let me carry their tripod, one thing I started doing a lot of was audio. And so I would go out with a post photographer. They would focus on the stills, I would gather audio, and I feel like there was nothing that was more useful to me in learning how to structure a multimedia story than learning to essentially build a radio piece first and divorcing myself from the visuals completely and really just focusing on, because the audio for video is always going to be like the skeleton of your story. And so I would say, even before you do the video profile thing, I would say do some audio stories. Learn how to edit in editing software with audio first, and then the video stuff will come much more naturally. Then when it comes to video, I would say don't bite off more than you can chew at first. Like, use a simple camera. Like, I know a lot of news organizations where people are shooting videos for publication on their phones, and it looks fine, and it's perfectly acceptable way of doing things. I use a DSLR, but it's a pain in the I cannot, it's a terrible process. And so when I see beginners trying to learn video on a DSLR, I'm like, wow, you are going to drop out early. Coming back to the question that I couldn't answer before. You are going to, because it is incredibly difficult, and it's a pain in the ass even for someone who's been doing it for a little while. So I would say, like, simple. Start simple. Audio. Then marrying audio with still pictures. Then video. That's what I would say. Always use a tripod. It will make your editing like 200,000 times easier. Always wear headphones, because trying to cover up bad audio is better than will take up more time than actually editing your story. So, yes.
How do you learn to, like, do you use a program for editing?
I do.
Typically, yes.
I use Final Cut Pro because I'm old school. I haven't switched yet. At the Post, they've recently switched to Final Cut X10, whatever you want to call it. It scares me. So I know a lot of people use Adobe Premiere now. And the thing about Premiere is that you can download a 30-day free, fully functional trial. So you can play around with it for free and see if you like it. And it's pretty intuitive. You can start in iMovie. I don't really know iMovie. You can start in it. But I actually think it makes a lot more sense to start with a really good editing software, because then you'll actually understand what you're doing instead of the computer trying to do it for you and figure out what you're trying to do and then having to learn a new software. So yeah, I use Final Cut. And I did a lot of Googling when I first started editing, like, how do I do this? Google. You know, and you can, if you give yourself a project and you need to get it done, you'll figure it out.
Kind of a similar question to the ones before about how do you get your staff and new writers excited about doing multimedia piece? Do you kind of feel yourself as like a one-person circus, sort of doing all of the photos and video, but for our writers, it's almost overwhelming to do a full story, let alone can you attach a short multimedia piece along with it?
What I might do is not try to assign them to do both at the beginning. I would, if you have some of your staffers who are interested in learning multimedia, don't have them do a print story. Like, go out and shoot this just for our website. I think that's both less overwhelming, and I think it also makes more sense because like I said before, you don't want the multimedia to be like, hey, and can you also add a little bit of video on the end of this? Because nobody wants to see that, if that's the way that it's being pitched, I know that you guys are dealing with small staffs, so I know this is overwhelming, but I'm sure there's somebody on your staff who's interested in doing this stuff, and let them go for it. Because I do think you're not going to be able to force writers to do documentary video if that's not what they want to do. But I bet there are some who might want to do that. And I think, it's good to be a specialist in something. And I think if somebody's a superb writer, they need to understand enough video, like maybe do 1 or 2 lynda.com tutorials on like shooting and editing video. But other than that, they need to be able to communicate with somebody. But in our newsroom, for example, like we have dedicated staff to shoot video or photos, and I have done 1 article for the print newspaper in my 7 years, and it was mostly like photos with really long captions. But because I know that that's not what I'm good at. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm terrible at the staffing questions because I don't have a staff. I'm a staffer. So, does that answer your question at all? Okay. Yes.
It's a little bit different, but what do you think of Vine, and do you think it's going to be kind of a new avenue for content delivery? I mean, I love it. It's fun to play with, but yeah.
I love Vine. I also love. Have you seen Light with 2 T's? Oh my god, so much fun. It's like time lapse on your phone, like super quickly. It's very fun. Yes, the thing that I haven't quite figured, and I haven't played with Vine, admittedly, enough probably as I should have, but I think the fact that it's owned by Twitter makes it a little weird because like I want to be able to easily share that stuff like on my Facebook page, but it's like not easy to do that. I think that's a limitation, but I think it's a great way of sharing video. And sometimes, like if you're the one thing I would say is if one of your print reporters is at the scene of something and they are there and something phenomenal is happening, like please shoot like 1 video clip. That's all you need. Like stand in one place, hold your shot for 10 seconds and capture the amazing, I don't want to, it's not something bad. Capture the amazing dog doing 9 backflips, I don't know. So that reporters can do, and they should do, and they should be absolutely prepared to do, like capture a 10-second clip. And I think Vine is a super great way for them to then share those. That's what I think about Vine. I need to play with it more, but I like it, and I also like Light. And what else am I playing with these? I'm an Instagram addict, but that's just me. Yes.
How do you coordinate when you have multiple components of a story? If you have a video and someone doing a written story, how do the reporters coordinate? Are they covering different parts of the story, or are they reporting together separately?
That's a really good question, and it completely depends on the story. Some of these stories I did completely on my own, like the style thing that was only online. I did that all on my own. The story about the kids crossing the border, I didn't find that family. The print reporter did. He went down there first. He found that family. He came back and he was like, Alex, you're going to love this. You have to do, this is such a fascinating and heartbreaking story. You have to do a video. So I went down separately after he had already come back, which actually worked pretty well because he had some unanswered questions and I could like kind of re-interview them and get updates because he had gone a few weeks before on how the family was doing. So we worked pretty separately on that one, but we were constantly in contact to be like, hey, can you ask them this today? I'm working on another draft of the story and I need this information. So we've worked it that way. And then the most difficult way to work is when you're working on a story and you have like 3 people covering the exact same story, which is one of the other reasons that I would say as much as you can try to not duplicate each other's work, the better. But with most of the people I work with, I have like very good eye communication and like there are people who can do it well. There are some reporters who I know when they're walking next to somebody, they need that interview. I know that I'm not going to get a good shot when they're like doing an interview on the fly that way, but they'll know when I'm capturing a really good scene and I don't want them to go in there and be like, hey, what's happening? What's going on? And I'll be like, no, you just ruined my shot. They'll know that, and so we'll like eye communicate. But it really just does take a lot of talking. And like usually when we're working on a story like that, we'll have kind of a briefing at the end of the day. How did things go? Hey, you got in my shot. Hey, your camera was clicking when I was capturing good audio. Or, hey, you didn't give me a chance to get what I needed. And so we just talk a lot. But what we try to do at the Post, since we're not trying to duplicate, is if a print reporter comes up with an idea for a story and there's maybe a character that has a really interesting story that relates, but they're just one graph in their story, then maybe I'll go do a profile on them and kind of blow out that character. So we're not doing parallel, so that we're not doing exactly the same work. Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody else? Yes?
I know a lot of the papers are struggling with, as some people have already brought up, limited resources. Can you talk a bit about what makes a good visual story? If there is a conflict and you have to decide what resources you're going to pour into a story, how do you know what's a good video story, what's a good audio story, what's better in print? Do you have some tips about thinking about that?
Yeah, so video is terrible at covering really complicated concepts. When people are trying to pay attention to visuals and audio, they need stuff that's relatively like a pretty simple storyline. So policy stories, not the greatest for video, but if those policy stories, if you have found a character that is going to be affected by that policy, video is very good at capturing emotion, human connection. Video is very good at that. Numbers, when people hear numbers either in audio or video, they do not remember them at all. So any stories that have a lot of data in them, that should not usually be, these are really declarative, that shouldn't usually be a video story. Like I said, really strong characters, good for video. Something I would do a lot with that style series is I would do a lot of pre-interviewing. So when I first started shooting that series, I would come back with way too much footage. And as I learned about it, what I would do is I would shoot the stills first. So if I saw somebody with a really cool outfit, I would see somebody coming and I'd be like, hi, I'm with the Washington Post. I do a style series. Can I take a few photos of you? And as I'm taking photos, I'd ask, oh, where'd that necklace come from? Oh, hey, where are those, what's the story behind those shoes? Those are really interesting shoes. And if they were open, had personality, then I would interview them. So I would get the stills of them anyway, but I would be pre-interviewing them to see if they would be good on video, as I was shooting them. So I wouldn't end up with a whole bunch of really boring interviews that I had to go through and store. Trying to think of what else makes. Those are, I would say those are the general rules I think of. Are there good characters? Is there emotion? Is it too policy heavy? Too many numbers? Is it too complex for video? And those are kind of the things that I'm thinking about. Some weather stories, I think you can just have a time lapse for, and what I would like to see in a lot of more weather stories is like when they had the blizzard up here, not very long ago, the editors called and they were like, hey, can you cover the blizzard? And I was like, you know what? Like, I think everybody in the universe is sick of hearing about, like, and this much snow, and while this guy was out there shoveling, he said, boy, what a snowstorm, and, you know, and, like, I'm sick of reporting it. The readers are sick of reading it. I would much rather see a really beautifully designed infographic. This is how much snow fell. This is how much has fell compared to other years. I would much rather see that in a graph rather than reading that same story again. Is that helpful? Okay. Anybody else? Any questions? Cool. Thank you. Thanks, guys.